As the prophet of esports, I rely on trustworthy and meaningful data every day. Data from our research partner, YouGov, offers the most complete view of esports fans and gamers in the world, providing context to who they are, what they think, the brands they buy, and things they do. YouGov's connected insights and research services inform strategy at every level. If you're a team, a brand, agency, or rights holder, you should be talking with YouGov. Their partners measure and maximize ROI and are telling compelling stories with data. Visit yougov.com/gaming-esports to learn more. Let's talk about Epic. So Epic Apple in the news. By the way, did anyone tune in for their the first day where they I think they're still continuing to live stream the proceedings? And
are you talking about the first 20 minutes when they couldn't figure out how to mute the audience?
It was like a Zoom call, but they didn't mute the audience, so everyone was just putting in their 2 cents, like hardcore thoughts and opinions that people were just screaming out into this. Free, people yelling free Fortnite. So it was not the most professional start to these legal proceedings. But a ton of information has emerged as a consequence of this. So I don't really care, unless you guys really want to, don't really care about talking about the lawsuit itself. What's more interesting is what has emerged, the information that has emerged from this lawsuit. And Matthew Ball on Twitter reported a few of the things, namely, and I'll bring this up here. Hopefully this works because this has been pretty finicky. I don't know if you guys can see this, but why did Epic Games' profit fall short of plan of record in 2019? And this document that was disclosed in this lawsuit reveals 2 causes. One, cancellation of Winter Battle Pass, $322 million, and cause number 2, overestimated esports opportunity, cost of $154 million. I'm just curious in general to get your reactions to this, guys, in terms of these 2 causes that have come out in terms of Epic Games falling short of their plan. Is anything surprising in here? The numbers, the causes.
Paul has legally paid me to say the prophet was right about Fortnite Esports. So
2018, folks. 2018.
The prophet
I wrote a blog post
long ago. What's surprising to me, these are EBITDA numbers, right? So not even revenue numbers. So they thought they were going to make, I assume they lost money, but they thought they were clearly going to be making positive, bottom line contribution from esports. That's pretty surprising. And to be off by that magnitude, $154 million on the bottom line, you have to be off by multiples of that, I would imagine, on the top line, which means that they really, really dramatically overestimated, the esports opportunity, or I guess just overspent on some of the events. Maybe if they're including, how big was the Fortnite World Cup prize in that?
They gave away
40 million. So maybe I guess that's probably how you overestimate by 150 million. You give away 50 million, but yeah, I mean, that's a big number. So
you're a good guy, Jeff.
Is anyone surprised that the Winter Battle Pass canceling that results in 322 million?
Wait, why did they cancel the Winter Battle Pass again? Can somebody remind me about that?
I saw somewhere that they made a battle pass free to combat Apex Legends. So there was a battle pass right around the launch of Apex or something like that, where they basically made it free because
that's
Apex
also crazy because it doesn't feel like they got $332 million worth of value from that. That's a movie. They could have made a AAA Fortnite movie starring Leonardo DiCaprio. Am I right? Am I right? No, they could have done that.
But I don't know if I would agree with that assessment, right? If you're a free-to-play game, the most important thing is engagement. So if you lose your players, you're basically screwed. But so if that kept their players going, you'd have to see the financials the rest of the way. But if they were able to theoretically keep someone and then they bought the next 2 battle passes, that's a pretty good investment. one of the things that I thought also from the numbers was like, holy crap, Fortnite was way bigger than I thought. Like, obviously we all knew it was massive and like the biggest game out there, but $9 billion in revenue in 2 years. Like, that is way higher than I think the third party, and like, I thought I would have guessed like, 3 to 5 billion. Like, it was multiples bigger than I think people thought. Or at least I thought. I don't know if you guys had a different perception.
Julia has a question here, and Julia, thank you for coming, by the way. Says, is it because they started doing the Fortnite crew memberships? I don't know if you guys have thoughts on that. Do you know? I don't actually.
What's a Fortnite crew membership?
Loss? Is she talking about is part of the revenue loss because of the crew memberships? Is that the question?
Yeah, correct.
Okay. And are the crew? What are the crew? Yeah, what is a crew membership?
I don't actually. Let me just while we're waiting for Julia to come back on that, I just want to show you one other thing here, which is this other little tidbit that came out. I don't know if this is. It's not going to let me. I will just say it's another little tidbit that came out here, which was only if they looked at one of the things that came out about the Epic Game Store was that only 7% of people who acquired a free game on the Epic Game Store, only 7% became what they call payers. In other words, then purchased another game other than the free game that they got. Is anyone's like, because we had this discussion, right? The value of all the hundreds of millions being invested in the Epic Game Store. Does anyone think now, with that statistic, that maybe the 600 million, whatever that they've lost on the Epic Game Store is not an investment that's looking like it's paying off here?
The only issue is you have to do it somehow. I don't necessarily think that free games was a winning strategy, but you had to pay to get people on the platform somehow. I don't think they picked the right way of doing this, especially since they gave away such good games that there just wasn't like, when you give away Civ 6, you're going to get a lot of people who want to play Civ 6 and Civ 6 only. It was just a big deal. Go ahead.
I mean, we don't have, it's hard to answer this question without all the numbers, right? So, because we don't know what the lifetime value.
I just did.
Oh, there you go. We don't know. We don't know.
Lindsay, that was aggressive. I love the way you're just like Civ 6, of course.
we don't have the lifetime value, right, of these customers they're acquiring. So just saying 7% converted to premium, like, this is effectively a freemium funnel, right? So, that's no different than saying, oh my God, like only actually it's probably less, like 5% of people who download Candy Crush, like actually pay money. Like, it must be a terrible business when you're paying to acquire all those players.
The one you can quickly compare it to that just happened though was that Quibi lost 91% of its subscribers after the free trial ended. I mean, that's what pops up in my mind. Obviously, well, actually, they did worse than Quibi because Quibi kept 9% after the free trial ended. And that's just like a raw number. But I would think anything, when you're talking about retaining less than 1/10 of users, or converting rather less than 1/10 of users, that's pretty iffy.
Yeah, it's one of these things. Sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
No, you go, Paul. You go.
I was just going to say, it's a little bit different in the sense that if you got the free game, right, you still have to come back to play the free game. So they continuously have more chances, I guess, to hook you as a payer, like they call it. It's one of those things where the number, given the size of the investment, seems low to me, sort of confirms my initial belief, which is this was a bad investment. And you could argue it's more long-term than this. We haven't had enough time. The long-term value of that 7% might be very high. Like, you could make that argument, and I understand that argument. I just think fundamentally the sheer size of the giveaway and the freebies should have probably resulted in more, in my opinion, for me to feel good about this.
So I'd have to look up this number to be sure, but I thought I saw a number that said like the amount of like users they acquired, they paid like $2.50 per user. Like, just if I threw that number at you, you'd be like, well, that's pretty good, right? Like, if I told you Epic would acquire 10 million users for their store at a price of $2.50 a user, or whatever the math is, Like that to me seems like they'd probably take that in a heartbeat.
But then when you look at scalability of the size that they created and the amount that they were able to retain, I don't think it makes as much sense. Like if you're talking about, I thought we were talking about like a lot more users than 10 million. I don't remember now because I remember the $2. It was like $2.62 or something like that.
Yeah, that was.
But then if you,
the 10 million might have been wrong. The 260.
No, I know, and I can't remember what it was either, and I thought it was much larger than that. But then if you have, like, I don't know exactly how to explain this, but with more organic growth, you would expect to retain more people. And this is obviously not organic growth, it's paid growth. But given that so few of the paid growth subscribers were able to see the organic value in it, it's concerning. I don't know if you're following, but
I do follow. I think without knowing, because let's say 7%, those 7% stuck around and this was their main store. Like, you will make, I mean, Valve is literally a money printing machine, right? Whoa, we got 2 Pauls. It's freaky. That's just too much intelligence here.
I actually thought that was kind of cool. I thought Paul was like, he'd cloned himself and he was unveiling it live on the podcast. It's like,
that would be news.
Okay, so a quick Google search. A quick Google search says 180 million. Just so you know, to further refine your point.
So they got 180 million people. 7% became paid. So if those 7%, I mean, you're talking about 14 million people stuck around and bought another game. Like, what if those 14 million people make this their main store? Like, that is a massive opportunity. You could make hundreds of millions in revenue off that in perpetuity and lifetime value.
But there's also a strong assumption there, which is they make it their main store. And I suspect, and this is again, I'm really overreaching here, but I suspect a lot of people who convert from that are just buying the Epic Store exclusive titles, right? Like just not to be, negative Nancy here or whatever phrase you want to use, but like, I feel like a lot of people download the freebie, see that Control, which was a critically acclaimed game, was only available in the Epic Store. They already have it anyway. They buy it there. That's not really an effective, that I'm sure they're counted in the upgraded user category, but they weren't really an upgraded user. You're right. The goal is the real valuable users are the ones that do what you're describing. They say, I'm done with Steam. This is my main port of call. I'm going to be buying every game I get from here on out here. But I suspect that is a much harder conversion to achieve, and it's certainly not what's being measured or what seems to be being measured in their number.
Guys,
but I guess the point would be, not to belabor the point, but wouldn't it be like you have to build that habit? So it's like the strategy, like literally day one, we said the strategy.
I have your nickname, Jeff the Apologist Cohen. He's
like,
just gonna.
But I'm saying, like, isn't this exactly what you would expect in order?
Jeff
like
Fortnite Store Cohen.
We've said all along, like, Steam was an incredibly tough competitor to beat. It would be very hard to beat them. But if you did, you'd literally have a license to print money because that's basically what Valve has. So what they did was they gave away a bunch of free games. It cost a lot of money. Then they bought exclusives, which kept people in the ecosystem. Over time, as Paul has said, they need to make their platform actually better than Steam so people stick around. But in theory, if they can do that, they build the habit and they continue spinning the flywheel with good exclusive games. Like, I don't know, wouldn't this be exactly if you wanted to beat Steam, wouldn't this be exactly what you had to do?
That's
I think
like
it will
something
work, but like this is the only strategy that
sounds like something I would say, and I do actually I agree with you, Jeff. All joking aside, I think you're right. This is not like they didn't launch this thinking this was going to be a 2-week fight and then they'd win, right? They launched this recognizing this was a protracted multi-year investment where it was going to be gradually inculcating a player base, and they probably were smart enough to, I'd say, to recognize that acquiring a user versus converting to this habitual hyper user was going to occur in many stages too. So you're right. Like, I agree with that. It's just, it's tough because we're at the point in the war that they've chosen to fight where, they haven't won yet, right? But they have experienced a lot of the losses. And, this is where the conviction moment kicks in, because you're right. I do think success looks a lot like failure for quite a while, which is certainly why Epic is prepared to stick with these metrics for, the foreseeable future, it seems like.
To be honest, it's easier to have conviction when Fortnite's generating like $4.5 billion a year of revenue, right? Like
That's right,
it's a little easier to give away hundreds of millions of dollars of free games when you have this cash cow printing money in the background. Anyways, guys, I want to move on from this. I just want to read a couple of these. Julia says the monthly memberships, $11.99. This is how disconnected from Fortnite I am. I didn't even know Fortnite had a monthly membership. I don't think that was the reason why they canceled that specific battle pass. But guys, the question I don't think we addressed is, how did they so wildly overestimate the esports revenue? Like, how did Epic get that so wrong? And again, is it a lack of self-awareness there? I just think about that for a second. I just want to read these comments and then we'll come to that. Zev says, the juice just got here. We still going with that, Zev?
Sup, Zev? How you doing?
We are, Zev. Of course we are. Sam says double the profits. There you go. Army Pathfinder. We talking Apple versus Epic this week? Army, we are. But not, you're right, not technically Epic versus Apple, just the findings, the learnings that have come out from the Epic Apple lawsuit. Chris says, I think agreeing here with Jeff, Epic still drawing in younger players. Tomorrow's hardcore gamers were not old enough to stand Steam. I think that is a good point. That is a good point. That is one of the openings that Epic has here. Any thoughts on the esports front, guys, before I move to the final learning? Or do you want me to give you the final learning from the lawsuit here?
You're muted, but Paul, I want to
give us the final learning.
I want to you were right. You were right initially, so I want to hear your thoughts on why they failed.
I mean, because Fortnite was never set up to be an esport. Like, you can't have a third player shooter that changes meta every single week, like, be a successful esport. It was never going to work as a competitive game. And it always was clear to me in the way Epic executed on Fortnite Esports that this was a marketing play, right? This was, how do we get people excited about Fortnite, playing Fortnite and buying new skins? This was not, we want to foster a competitive scene and support the top players. And right, like there was nothing in the way of building out a long-term sustainable esport. This was all flash and sizzle and let's get excited, rah, Fortnite. And so it's a great marketing play, but for some reason they just didn't admit to themselves that it was a great marketing play. Someone there was sufficiently delusional that they thought it was going to do 150 million of EBITDA, which is, like, to Jeff's point, like, we're talking at $500 million of revenue at least, most likely. So Sam says Fortnite Esports is such a terrible viewer experience. It's probably a worse player experience too, for a lot of reasons.